Ooh, I got some hot shit for y'all. I got some hot shit for y'all. Yes, sir. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope everybody having a happy, beautiful, awesome, cold-ass Friday here in Toledo, Ohio. If you're in Ohio, I know your ass cold in the bitch. If you up north, I know your ass. Fuck, everybody around the world cold. I hope y'all warm and bundling up, man. Make sure them babies cold and the kids cold and the elderly. And I mean warm and the elderly warm too. You heard me? Make sure everybody warm. Especially them kids. What I'm talking about cold. I'm fucked up out here. It might be this shit, you heard? Yo, Scott Peterson case, man. I always knew. I always had a funny fucking feeling that something was weird. Like, damn, bro. I watched the whole case. I followed that bitch, man. The only thing that they actually proved to me was that he was a cheater and he was a prolific liar. They never proved to me that Scott Peterson actually was a murderer, man. I bullshit you not. I mean, it was other shit going on in the area where they lived. You know, it was burglaries on the same street. You feel me? It was supposedly some cult going around kidnapping pregnant women, like pregnant women around 7 to 8 months pregnant. There was a store clerk that gave an account of two scary looking, weird looking white guys. One had long hair. He came in looking for her. She locked herself in the back of her, I think it was a flower shop she had. She locked herself in the back. She said she had a leery feeling. And those guys might be linked to Lacey Peterson's death. Y'all check this video out, man. Let me know what y'all think, man. But yeah, we got something going on. The Los Angeles County Innocence Project is taking up Scott Peterson's case. Y'all listen to this. Check it out.
Scott Peterson, who was sentenced to life in prison for murdering his pregnant wife, Lacey, after she disappeared on Christmas Eve in 2002. Yeah. Well, the Los Angeles Innocence Project has taken up the case as the convicted killer seeks new DNA testing, according to court filings. Now, the Innocence Project works to exonerate those who have been, in their position, wrongfully convicted, generally through forensic and other scientific evidence. Now, according to the official statement from...
Hey, I'm going to tell you right now, any kind of innocence project, they don't get involved unless they actually think some of them been fucked off. You feel me? So these people actually think something was left out, something was missed. They actually think that Scott Peterson might be innocent, and I also think he might be innocent. I've been thought that, man. Y'all go back and look at the case, man. Y'all pay attention to the part where there was burglaries on the block, specifically across the street from their house. There was witnesses that actually seen the dog around the time that she was supposedly dead. No, she was actually walking the dog. So there's different shit going on with the stories, but I think the state fucked up. I think they wanted to put this murder on somebody. They put it on Scott because he was such a big liar. He seemed like he was the killer, but to me, he never seemed like the killer. It just seemed like he was a prolific cheater. He just lied a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, they didn't have any kind of hardcore evidence that said that he did anything. No fingerprints, no blood, no nothing. It's all a substantial case. Substantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence. Come on, man. Y'all correct me on my word now. Circumstantial evidence, yeah.
The LA Innocence Project. They say, quote, the Los Angeles Innocence Project represents Scott Peterson and is investigating his claim of actual innocence. We have no further comment at this time, end quote. Well, we here at the Law and Crime Network have obtained the motion in full, have sifted through it, have some issues here that we'd like to share with you. Let's go through this and break this down.
Y'all listen up, pay attention.
Talk about it on the other end. First of all, they've said the defendant, Scott Peterson, by and through counsel, Los Angeles Innocence Project, will move the court for an order directing the people, that is the state, to provide the requested post-conviction discovery he is entitled to under Penal Code Section 1054.9. They have also said in this motion is filed concurrently with Peterson's motion to file documents under seal and motion for DNA testing pursuant to Penal Code Section 1405. And one more quote from the motion. It was about 142 pages long. Mr. Peterson respectfully requests that the court grant this motion and direct the people, again, the state, to provide the requested discovery so that further investigation into the claims set forth in the pending petition can be conducted. So those are just a couple of the nuggets out of this beast of a motion. It actually plays out like three motions. Luckily, I have here with me two experts to talk about this process. Brian Buckmeyer is here. He's a law and crime legal analyst. And joining him, Lara Uretzi.
If you've ever dreamed of owning an apartment complex and you live near one of these cities, then you've got to see the same ad that I saw 3 years ago.
And she was on the Scott Peterson defense team. So I've got to talk to you first here, Larry, get your initial reaction to the motions being filed based on your understanding of the case better than most.
I mean, it's great. You've got the Los Angeles Innocence Project having shown not just an interest, but has taken on the case. And I mean, they don't take any case, right? There's plenty of cases out there, and there's plenty of people, thousands, who are claiming that they've been wrongfully convicted. But guess what? Of all of these cases,
I try to reach out to an Innocence Project. They ain't fucking with me.
It's huge, and it speaks volumes. And they usually only take cases where of individuals who have made credible claims of actual innocence. And when you read the paperwork that they filed, the documents that they filed with the court, it's very clear that they believe that he has been wrongfully convicted, and they're requesting for DNA testing on.
I mean, he did a lot of shit though, man, to make himself look guilty. You feel me? Like when he got his bond, he went and dyed his hair all blonde, his facial hair all blonde. That motherfucker was at the airport about to catch a flight. He went and tallied. He went and got a bunch of cash, couple thousands, about 20,000 cash. He was about to dip the fuck out. You know what I'm saying? So it made him look like he was guilty as fuck. But in reality, man, I don't think he was guilty, bro. I just thought he knew that they was on his ass. He knew that they was about to blame him for something that he didn't do. And he says, I'm about to get the fuck up out of here. You feel me?
A number of items, and it's pretty clear where they're going with it as far as what the theory is.
So, Brian, you've read through this. We hear about, I think the Innocence Project as an entity has some credibility. And when we hear that they've taken on a case, you think, oh, okay, let's look at that. I think a lot of people would look at this case and say, you're nuts. I mean, we've seen this tried 1.5 times. We know this nationally, internationally detailed case. How is all of this stuff they claim in their motion missed, misinterpreted, held back from the defense? Give me your thoughts on the things you've read in this motion.
Yeah, so it's, as you said, it's 3 different motions that they've filed together. Bullet points, as you said, one to file documents under seal, one for retrying or retesting of evidence, or even testing evidence that was not tested to begin with for DNA, and then for additional discovery or discovery that might have been lost or damaged throughout the period of time. But I think I read it and I'm thinking, you know what? Let's check it out. At the very least, I agree with you. Everyone who has watched this case, I will put it out there. When this case happened, I think he's innocent. In high school and didn't follow it as intensely as I think everyone else on the network did. But the questions that they have, the overarching theme is the investigation was narrowly focused on the guilt of Scott Peterson. They did not properly investigate, as we've heard before, the burglary. They
had tunnel vision on Scott Peterson because he did so much lying trying to cover up the fact that he was a cheater, that he had a side piece. You know what I'm saying? He did so much lying that it looked like he was suspicious of killing somebody, but he didn't kill her, man. He didn't kill her.
Across the street, that their belief is that Lacey Peterson witnessed this burglary, and they're saying they've got people who admitted to abducting her and then killing her to quote unquote shut her up, and that this orange van that witnesses identify as being at the location that was then later transported to an airport and burned, and there are presumptive tests of blood in that van. And they're asking to test that blood in the van, on the duct tape in the van, on the handles of the van, everywhere in the van, and saying, let's see whose DNA it is. And at least at that point for me, I'm thinking, you know what? I'm kind of curious about the blood too. Because if that blood is in there and that's Lacey Peterson, I think they've got a little bit of legroom here to run. The other thing that I thought was very interesting as well was they're arguing that the science that was used to measure the femur of Connor, the unborn child inside Lacey, was incorrect, and that measurement was used to see when the time of death was, and they're arguing it should have been somewhere in early January 3rd, which feeds into their theory that Lacey Peterson was kidnapped, held, and then her body was dumped much later. It's maybe a little...
Most people have no clue that in 2023, the best way to make money on Amazon is not with physical products. It's Amazon's other company, Audible. Audible pays me $8,000 to $10,000 every single month in passive income, and I'm not the only one. People like Katrina and Carla, Elena, Renee, all making thousands of dollars a month in passive income using the same system.
This shit deep, man. I'm telling you.
Sensational. It's a
that
very
man innocent,
intriguing.
man.
For me, I'm not sure what to believe at this point, but for me, I'm saying let's test it and let's find out.
Larry, two things come to mind for me as Brian has laid out there. You've got the DNA issue. Here we are 22 years post-crime. So there are scientific changes. There's also degraded evidence if there is anything left to retest. But then you have this whole van burglary abduction story. When you think of those two issues, which to you is the strongest, if either, and what do you expect to see as we learn more about these arguments from the Innocence Project?
Well, the issues are not separate. They're very much connected. So the DNA testing is also connected to the burglary because it's very clear where they're going with it. If you look at what they're asking to be tested, they're asking basically to have items that were left by the burglars in the Medina's house. Now, the Medinas are the neighbors who live across the street from the Petersons. And they're...
How can you know that there was a burglary right exactly across the street? There was burglaries throughout the neighborhood, and you don't test any of the shit? Like, they had tunnel vision, man. They zoomed in on Scott. They zeroed in on Scott Peterson, and that was the only thought theory that they had. Scott Peterson did it. He had a side chick. He killed his pregnant wife because he didn't want to have a wife and a baby. Hey, that's what they did. I'm telling you. Scott Peterson is innocent. Scott Peterson is innocent. You hear it here first.
Their house was burglarized. Now, there was a dispute as far as the date of the burglary, and the defense's position was always that the burglary did occur on the morning of Laci Peterson's disappearance, which was December 24th of 2002. The prosecution position was that, no. The burglars are saying they did it on the 25th, right when all the media frenzy was going on and the media were parked across from the Peterson house. And for some reason, the prosecution and the detectives decided to believe these burglars and their statement that it happened on the 25th, despite the fact that they were witnesses who had seen a van outside the Medina's house on the morning of Laci's disappearance.
Yo, when the fuck do the police take any criminal word for it? They took those burglars' word for it that they burglarized the house on the 25th and not the 22nd, I believe it is.
And people saying that a woman who was pregnant was forced into a van. I mean, there was all sorts of evidence, right? And a van was found the next day, burned intentionally, and that's the orange van that they're also including in their DNA testing. So I can see very clearly what's going on. They're trying to connect the burglary or people involved in the burglary to Laci's disappearance and Connor's disappearance and murder, because they're trying to test what was found in the Medina's house left behind by the burglars. And they're testing also items that were found near the bodies, on the bodies after the recovery, and in the van, including the mattress that had blood on it. And there's pieces of it, even though parts of it are burned, but there's enough, hopefully, for reach.
Wow, a bloody mattress in the van, an orange van that was seen outside of their house, witnesses that say they saw a pregnant woman being stuffed in the van. Bro, why didn't we hear any of this? We didn't hear any of this evidence, yo. That's because the prosecution had tunnel vision. The police, the detectives had tunnel vision. It's crazy.
It was tested at some point, but they wanted to test it.
2002, y'all.
The original defense team, you must have explored all of these things at that time. Why did nothing come of that?
This man been locked up for over 20 years because he's a fucking cheater and a prolific liar. Because he's a cheater and a prolific liar.
The defense team did not have all that information. And since the conviction, the investigation never stopped. It's been ongoing, and new evidence has come about. Clearly some people have talked. So there's new evidence, and based
Free
on
Scott
new
Peterson.
evidence, they're going back and
Free Scott Peterson, y'all.
Things. And again, the Innocence Project.
Don't think I'm crazy. Don't cuss me out.
There's got to be
Free Scott Peterson
here for them to be convinced that they're dealing with someone who was wrongfully convicted. And remember, the Scott Peterson case, now my understanding is there's also evidence that the burglary, there's enough evidence now to show that the burglary did occur at the time of her disappearance. And Lacey was the kind
Whoa.
of person, she was one of those, you know, the type of person, if she saw something wrong, she would confront. And the suspicion is that she clearly confronted him. And
have you ever felt like there has to be a better way to put strategy without tons of extra calories, weird chemicals,
all these fucking years this man been locked up because he's a cheater.
Side effects like crashes and jitters.
And of course, to prevent being caught, the theory is that they abducted her and then killed her. And it was public knowledge where Peterson had gone. This idea that there was a lot of evidence against Peterson is not necessarily true. Yes, they were trying to build a circumstantial case. This case was televised, but then the cameras were not in the courtroom. So a lot of it was, you know, obviously being covered by reporters and the media. And the circumstantial evidence and the prosecution theory was that Scott Peterson had killed his wife at night on the eve of the 23rd, or possibly early morning hours of the 24th, then in the house where they live. Then he had wrapped her up in a tarp, put her in a toolbox in the back of his truck, and then the allegation was that he drove that truck to his work warehouse, where he spent about an hour to put together a woodworking type device. And then he went on the internet and he was doing some searches, sent a work email while supposedly his wife's dead body, the corpse, is in his truck. Then again, in broad daylight, drives to the Berkeley Marina, and again in broad daylight, carries this heavy body, puts it in this small boat and dumps.
The boat wasn't even big enough to carry him and the body. They said that the boat would have capsized if it was anything else besides him inside the boat, y'all. Come on, man. I don't even think they did a test like that. I don't even think they tested his boat to see if it would have capsized. They zeroed in on Scott Peterson, and he got blamed for the murder.
In the Bay, and this was, of course, everybody knew where he'd been. It was publicized from day one, and there was no forensic evidence, zero forensic evidence tying him to this alleged murder that they were alleging he did. It was sensationalized.
So hold on. He's good enough. He's good enough to not leave any evidence behind, right? No kind of evidence of a murder, but he's not good enough to not get caught cheating. Y'all think about this. He's not good enough. He's good enough to not leave any kind of forensic evidence behind, but he's not good enough to get caught cheating. Y'all think about that.
Focused on the affair. They focused on some of the lies and basically convicted him because there was so much hatred towards him. It was palpable, even in the courtroom at the time. It was, I mean, the entire world, it wasn't just nationally followed. The entire world was following this case, and he was the most hated guy at the time.
No doubt about it. Never underestimate the power of dislikability. So,
you had two jurors, specifically one juror who lied. She definitely didn't like him because she was also a victim of domestic violence. She lied on her jury form and said that she wasn't a victim of domestic violence.
Ryan, is this a situation where there are violations by the prosecution, the state, to turn over what they had at that time? Or is it new evidence to them as well?
It's a bit of both. If you look at the document, they are making allegations of Brady violations. So Brady violations being that of exculpatory information that was not turned over at the appropriate time. And they're also asking for evidence based on their review of the defense's file and just saying, hey, some of it seems to be missing. Some of it suggests that there's other information there, and we're just trying to collect it. I think you made reference of a 142-page motion. That's the DNA motion. The discovery request motion is closer to the tune of 432 pages. And so it looks like they're really trying to collect evidence and in some regards, retry this case. And in other regards, try to retry the case with the appropriate evidence they feel should have been there to begin with. But when I think about cases like this, you always get pushback. You always get, well, we already found him guilty. Well, we already have the evidence here. And what I would respond to that would be, are you any more sure of Scott Peterson's guilt than the majority of the country was for the Central Park Five? Because the Innocence Project has shown us time and time again that society has gotten it wrong. And my position, especially as a defense attorney, has always been, My father didn't teach me much, but he's a general contractor, and what he always said was, we measure twice and cut once. And if there's an opportunity to measure again to make sure we got it right, then measure again and make sure that the person in prison is truly the person that belongs in there. And if we measure a second time and that's not the right person, then we find justice for that person. But don't come to me when the Innocence Project proves someone's innocent and cheer on the hard work of this project after they've done the job. If you're not going to be there when they're in the trenches fighting to try to prove someone's innocence. Take the time to review the evidence, have an open mind, and if there are questions that need to be answered, ask them.
That's what it is right now. A whole bunch of questions with some alleged new evidence, DNA and otherwise, that will get Scott Peterson out of prison. We are going to keep an eye on this. Thank you both for chipping in on this unbelievable reliving of this story, 22 years old.
If y'all know about this case, man, y'all jump in the comments, man. Let me know what y'all think, man. I've been telling people, hey, man, that man didn't do this, man. They didn't prove anything to me, but that he was a cheater and a hell of a liar, a prolific liar. You feel me? Like, no forensic evidence, man. Like, come on. Like I said, bro, he was smart enough not to leave any forensic evidence. You know what I'm saying? But he wasn't smart enough to not get caught cheating. Make fucking sense, yo. Like, come on, like. Man, y'all make sure y'all like, subscribe, man. Tell y'all friends, man. Tell everybody subscribe, like, man, your notification bells, man. Help support my channel, man. Help my channel grow, man. Bird Gang family, man. Hey, hope everybody having a safe Friday. Y'all be safe, man. Blessed weekend, yo. I'm out. You know what it is. Some G Bird Talk Media.